No Labels is a political organization created in 2010 to appeal to centrist voters and promote bipartisanship. Could it be a force to reckon with in the 2024 election? And what impact might No Labels have in a red state like Oklahoma? That's the topic of this week's in-depth conversation with moderator Reese Wetzel.
Thank you, Rich. And today we will be examining the political parties and a potential third option that could be coming up ahead of the 2024 election season. Joining us to do that, we have Alicia Andrews, chair of the Oklahoma Democratic Party, Chad Alexander, Republican strategist here in Oklahoma, and joining us via Zoom, we have Holly Page, co-founder and senior strategic advisor for No Labels. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
All right, Holly, I want to start with you here. Do you consider No Labels to be a political party, or is it something different? And what is your mission heading into the 2024 election?
It is definitely not a political party. It is something different. We are an organization made up of citizens, really, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, who are coming together to challenge the status quo and put the country on a different path. And in terms of 2024, what No Labels is doing right now is laying the groundwork to offer the American voters a potential third choice. Your language is perfect. Thank you so much. We're not a third party, a third choice in 2024 should the traditional parties nominate folks who want to have a conversation about the past.
All right, so Holly's talking about a potential third choice, not a third party, making No Labels more of just an option and not a party. So when we look at that, Chad and Alicia, I want to ask you both, if a third party ticket runs in, or a third option runs in 2024, can that take away votes from Republicans or Democrats? Alicia, I'll start with you.
Well, Oklahoma already has several choices, right? We have 3 recognized parties, and folks can register as unaffiliated voters. So Oklahoma already has a choice. I don't see this new option as viable in Oklahoma or as a change maker in Oklahoma.
Do you think it could persuade Democrats at all in Oklahoma if they are wanting change and maybe the Democratic Party hasn't made those changes and they want to make some changes?
I think that folks who are registered as Democrats like what Democrats stand for, and this new option, as I understand it, won't sway Democrats.
Okay, Chad, what about you? How is the Republican Party looking? We're in a red state, so are Oklahomans secure in their Republican Party?
Well, I think right now you have majority registered voters are Republican. When I started back in politics, the Democrats had about a 20-point registration advantage. But you do see independents growing across the country, and you've seen it in Oklahoma. I believe they're up to 19% registration. It wasn't that way 20 years ago. I think there's some frustration at the polarization in government, but in a state like Oklahoma, as you mentioned, 51% of Republicans registered voters in 2020, but in the general election, there were 59% of the turnout. Independents fell by about 9 points. And so if you've got a 59% Republican turnout, it's going to be hard for a viable third-party candidate or a Democrat to win statewide. The lowest percentage getting Republican statewide in Oklahoma in 2022 is 55%.
Okay. And Holly, Chad brings up some good points there. It's hard to get a third option to get the ball rolling and get momentum here in America. And Americans love options. So why is that the case?
To speak to your friends in both parties, they create rules that make it very hard for innovative alternatives like what No Labels is suggesting to happen. But listen, we're in extraordinary times, right? If 2024 offers the American people a choice between President Biden and President Trump, they're pretty clear in poll after poll after poll. Over 70% of registered voters do not want that choice. They want something different. So I would say all bets are off. Anything is possible. Our idea is, should there be a path to victory, and we only go if we can see a path to victory, that we would offer a Republican and a Democrat running together, committed to the best interest of the country, not an individual political party, and challenging the entire establishment on both sides. It's pretty radical.
Yeah, Holly brings up some great points here. She talks about just if it is Biden and Trump again, what is the case for Republicans and Democrats? Are they going to be tired or exhausted of these options? Alicia, we'll start with you.
So I think that, well, we know that Biden's going to be our choice. And Biden has been slowly, methodically getting the work done. And so Democrats and left-leaning independents already have a choice. This other option, if folks don't want to be a Democrat or a Republican, they can be an unaffiliated voter. I don't think that folks are exhausted by Biden as a choice because he is making differences and improving the lives of Americans.
And Chad, what's your response to that?
Well, I think if you have a Biden-Trump race, as I've said before, about 60% of Americans say they would prefer another choice. But I think with the polarization you have in the country right now, if there's a third candidate, it will all depend on the issues that they're running on. If they're taking a more left-leaning stance, that will probably pull from Joe Biden. If they're taking a more right-leaning stance, that will pull from whoever the Republican nominee is. And we're really early in this process. People don't even start voting until next year. And these are a marathon. They're not a sprint.
Yeah, well, we talk about a marathon. There's currently, as of right now, 14 candidates that have said they are running. Is that too many? Or are we diluting it? And is that giving almost former President Trump an avenue to kind of sneak in?
It's giving him an avenue right now in perception of polling. But like I said, in June of 2015, which is equivalent to where we are in this primary process, Donald Trump had been in the race for about 3 weeks. Jeb Bush was polling at 22. Marco Rubio was polling at 18. Ben Carson was around 13. And you had about 7 others. Ted Cruz was at 4. Donald Trump was 1. It ended up being Trump and Cruz. The field will narrow. All these people will not still be in the race by the time we get to Iowa and New Hampshire. And then after Iowa and New Hampshire, usually after South Carolina, you see a lot of dropouts. If you remember in 2020, when Joe Biden won South Carolina, you immediately had several U.S. senators and Pete Buttigieg all drop out. And so it will narrow. And what does that mean for Trump if he's polling about 45 to 50% with Republicans? Well, he's already been president, so those Republicans that are spread out between all these various candidates in the polls, how many of them are likely to move to Trump after him being a known quality as a former president? Or we get down to a 2-person race, does that person then have a legitimate chance to win?
Now, Alicia, Chad brings up some great points. What do you have to say to that?
Well, we're a long way chronologically, on the calendar, but we're also a long way considering what the former president has in front of him legally. And so there's a good chance that there's a big change in the next 6 months with regards to the presidential election, regardless of what happens with the other choice.
And Holly, there was something you would like to add. What was that?
Just that I agree with Chad. I got my job with President Bill Clinton's first presidential campaign because no one wanted it. No one thought he could win. And anyone who is telling American voters that they know exactly what the makeup of the presidential election is going to be in 2024 need to be reminded about recent history. Anything is possible. And that's why No Labels is getting ballot access in every state in the nation to offer the American people a third choice should we need it.
Well, you talk about getting ballot access to every state in the nation. Have efforts been made to get ballot access here in Oklahoma?
I'm not sure exactly what Oklahoma's rules are. I'll check on that and get back to you. But I know that every state has a window of opportunity that you need to submit your signatures or voter registration cards, and they have all kinds of fine print to make it tough. We are in play in every state that currently has that window open, 18 in total, and we will be on in all 50 should we go forward with our unity ticket idea.
All right, and I want to stay with you here. No Labels has been around since 2010. Why is it gaining traction now ahead of this election season?
Listen, we've had our head down in Washington, D.C., working with men and women in the House and Senate to encourage, reward, and support them for coming together, working across aisles, and solving problems. Until No Labels came on the scene, all of the incentives in Washington rewarded the wrong things. Partisan allegiance and extremism, frankly. There were no rewards for solving the problem. In fact, you often got punished. So No Label stepped into that breach and offered support, really, for the men and women in the Problem Solvers Caucus in the House and our allies in the Senate. And together they did extraordinary things in the last Congress, including passing the hard infrastructure legislation that they wrote the framework for, the CHIPS Act, the Electoral Reform Act, gun safety bill that Senator Cornyn championed. So we've been doing a lot, but American politics is defined by the presidential election. We see a potential train wreck if we have a Groundhog Day situation for 2020, and the American people in this great nation of ours deserve something better.
Well, Holly, speaking to extremism, I want to ask both of you, is extremism getting tiresome for voters? Is that a potential avenue for centrist tickets to gain popularity? Alicia, we'll start with you.
Oh, absolutely. The American public is exhausted by the extremism, and it is the fringe on both sides. But the reality is, in Oklahoma, there is a swing of extremism on one side. We have our fringe, but there's an extremism on one side, and it kind of feels like the Oklahoma Republicans like that. Oklahoma Democrats have a path that supports Joe Biden. We like what he's doing. This isn't going to have a big effect.
Chad?
Well, what was interesting to me, if you look back in the 1990s, you'd see about 35% turnout in primaries. 2020, you had a 25% turnout in the Republican primary, and in the runoff, 15% of Republicans voted. So you do have a much narrower group in the parties that are actually voting in the primary and participating in the primary process, which tends to bring us more polarizing candidates. Now, we're going to see something interesting in Arizona. Kyrsten Sinema, who as a Democrat I think was the strongest elected official in Arizona, probably a dunk for re-election, now running as an independent if she totally gets in the race, but she's registered as an independent. So as a moderate voice who likes to work across the aisle and be bipartisan, can Kyrsten Sinema retain her seat in Arizona in a swing state? That will tell us a lot.
And Holly, I want to turn to you here. We talk about swing states. How important is it for No Labels to get into these swing states and kind of work their way in as an avenue to really take off and excelling this third option?
Well, we have a path to victory that we've mapped out. And remember, in the Electoral College, in all but 2 states, it's winner take all. So No Labels would have to win 34% of the vote in any given state. We are really focusing on those states that we know that we would have to win to ultimately win the White House, and giving voice. This is a really important point. We're not creating this at No Labels. As smart as I think some of my colleagues are, we couldn't create this. We're giving voice to it. The American people are clear. They do not like the current conversation, the polarization, the being pitted against each other. They don't want it anymore. And they want something to do about it. No Labels is offering them that chance.
Alicia, we talk about fundraising and some other problems that could come with the third option. Can that take money away from these political parties if the candidates that are for these third options seem more reasonable than the candidates that are for the primary parties?
So I believe that on both sides, the donor bases that we have now, because it's not the majority of Oklahomans, are people who absolutely believe in the side that they're donating to. If folks want another choice, and I keep coming back to this, they have an opportunity of hanging out in the unaffiliated column or in the libertarian column. I don't see No Labels, because it's been around since 2010, and it hasn't really gained traction in Oklahoma. I don't see it affecting fundraising for either party in a significant way.
Chad, I'll let you touch on that real quick.
I totally agree. The people that are funding the parties are funding the parties for a reason. It is their ideology. It's what they believe in. And the thing is we've never really had a legitimate third party in the United States. Abraham Lincoln was the first Republican president because that's when Republicans became a party. Usually when a third party comes up, one of the other 2 parties will die. And I don't know why actually it's in that way. There's no law that we have to have 2 parties, but you look at European parliamentary systems where you have multiple parties, they divide. But because we're a majority, it really seems to be hard for a third party to break through.
Can I just jump in here?
The concept of having No Labels, and I do wonder with polarization what it would be like.
And Holly, what was that you would like to add?
First of all, I obviously defer to both Alicia and Chad on knowing way more about Oklahoma than I could ever hope to. So I want to establish that. But, what Alicia said was that people have a choice. They can be libertarians or, register independent or whatever that is in your state. That's not a choice because everybody knows that's throwing away a vote. What's so unique about No Labels idea is it would be a Democrat and a Republican running together, right? You don't have to forsake your political identity to support a new direction for this country. And I would challenge the idea that the donors of the parties will stay. Hopefully there is a good percentage of those donors whose number one interest is the future of the nation, not either political party. And frankly, both need to modernize, get new ideas, new alliances, a vision for the future, and compete for our votes. 77 million common sense majority voters. We're there for the taking. They just have to speak to us.
And Holly, you brought up an interesting point. You said independent might be seen as throwing away a vote. Well, some might say that voting for no labels is still voting for an independent. So where do you draw the line there?
Well, it's not. It's a third choice made up of a Democrat and a Republican. So it's different than anything we've ever seen. And extraordinary times call for extraordinary ideas. Unique innovations. That's at the core of the American spirit. We, see a problem and we figure out a way to solve it. That's what this is about. And I think as we talk to people all over this country, when we explain what we're doing, and it's, there's lots of layers to it. So we invite folks to come and engage with us. We have a lot of Zoom programming and people can ask any question they want, really probe at this. But the bottom line is once people understand what we're talking about, not a third party, a third choice, a challenge to the status quo, the response we get most of all is thank God. That's really what we hear every day.
All right. Well, I would like to thank everyone. We are unfortunately out of time here. Alicia Andrews, chair of the Oklahoma Democratic Party, Chad Alexander, Republican strategist here in Oklahoma, and Holly Page, co-founder with No Labels. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank
Always a
you.
pleasure.